today my guest is Andy Reimink with HOH Water Technology. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. Let me tell you a little bit more about Andy. He is the CEO of HOH Water Technology. This is a third-generation family business serving customers in the industrial water treatment space. He grew up in West Michigan, and he's lived in Michigan, Florida, and Illinois since coming on board with HOH. So a third-generation water treatment facility. That's not something we hear about too often. Tell me about how you grew up in this business and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so a water treatment company, we are in the industrial water treatment space, which is basically we work with large industrial or commercial properties treating the water that they use for heat transfer. And my wife's grandfather started HOH back in 1968. He was actually in the Navy, and a lot of people coming out of the Navy got their start in water treatment because back in the day, they powered these big naval ships with steam boilers. And so they would learn to do water treatment on the steam boilers, come out of the Navy, and then find a career in water treatment in the private sector, treating a lot of steam boilers for heating and cooling, or I guess heating in this case, of large commercial facilities or industrial complexes. So that's how he started it, coming out of the Navy, and went off on his own and created HOH. And then my father-in-law succeeded him. And I got into it when I married my wife to some degree. We got married and I didn't know really anything about what her dad was doing. I was in a real estate background and in a small startup with some friends, and had no intention of joining the family business. And it was when my wife and I were about to have kids, and I thought that maybe a career change with something more stable would be a good idea, that I approached my father-in-law to say, hey, I'm interested, and if you need someone to help grow a territory, I would love a conversation. And so at that time, he was interested in someone in West Michigan where we were living, and that started the process.
So so this is your on your wife's side, right?
Correct.
And so you got married and you saw your father-in-law running this company. And I think that one thing that's very commendable of you is you said, hey, I want to grow a territory, not hand me the keys to the kingdom. Let me be the CFO or the COO. It was really you being humble saying, let me learn the business, right? So tell me about when you first started and you started essentially working for your father-in-law. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I mean, he was the president and CEO at the time, so I knew I wasn't going to be working obviously directly for him or have a lot of day-to-day interaction with him. My process of getting hired was similar to probably anyone. I had an interview schedule and, a bunch of interviews that I went on. At some point, I did interview with my father-in-law, and it was his common practice to try to interview everyone that was hired into the company. And, I was pretty direct with him at the beginning about my ambitions and my goals of wanting to be in leadership, whether it be the CEO one day or just in, a position of leadership within the company. But I was also very willing to start wherever I had to kind of prove myself. And so I was hired in on more of a sales role, but at the time we had a technician that was leaving the territory and actually going out to Arizona to work for us. And so when I first started, I spent about a year doing technician work and in the field, hands dirty, grinding away. And then on the free days that I'd go out cold calling and knocking on doors. So I really did start at the bottom of the company and slowly worked my way up over time, which I appreciate. I think that gives a lot of perspective for me as I've kind of progressed within the company.
If I had a crystal ball and all companies had the time to do exactly what you did, that is really what I think all new salespeople need to do. So as a chemist, I tell people I worked on both sides of the supply chain. I was a person processing the samples, figuring out the failure analysis, doing all those things. Then when I started selling into those same types of environments, I understood what they were doing. And so as a salesperson, when you understand what your technicians are going through, what the installers are going through, how difficult, how unhappy customers can be, it gives you so much more empathy as a salesperson, and you really learn the product. There's no better way to learn your product, your service that you're selling than to touch it, feel it every single day, right?
Yeah, and I love how your podcast specifically is focused on STEM and sales, because STEM sales are, I think, its own unique thing. And we've had different thought processes throughout our history of saying, like, you know what, if we could just find a really great salesperson, we can train them on our, our core competencies and business models and what we do. And right now, and this could change, 6 times over the next 20 years, but right now I sit here and go, I don't know if we can do that. Like, I need someone with some background and some technical skills to be able to go into that, into the field, because it's just so technical often that someone that just knows how to make a great sales presentation is going to struggle not knowing how to talk the lingo and know what a piece of equipment does or why it does it. So starting from the bottom, I think, is a great funnel process to like bring someone into sales eventually.
Yes, and you're so right. I do think that I think from my standpoint, I don't think somebody has to necessarily be, I call it an industry insider, or more eloquently, I say your competitors' rejects. I don't think that they need to be that, but they do need to be technical in some way, right? So again, I was a chemist and I sold capital equipment. I was a chemist and I sold specialty chemicals. Yeah, I didn't know everything about these, specialty chemicals, but I could learn it. And I was smart enough to know, okay, this plus this equals this, say this to a customer. So really ensuring that you're looking in the right niche, right? So, okay, do I need somebody with an engineering background? Do I need somebody who's a physicist? Because if you get somebody off the street, like who's selling cell phones, they don't have that technical know-how, and it's really the fact that their sales process is quick. And so they don't have to be really in depth. They don't have to build that bridge. They don't have to be the customer's consultant and walk lockstep with them. But so I do think what you're saying, it has so much validity, and there's always that fine line. And I focus on STEM sales because it's different. Everything, you have to be a technical salesperson. You're not a salesperson, you're a technical salesperson. And that technical piece is so crucial.
Yeah, and I don't think that I would ever stick to absolutes like this will never work. But I think as sales managers, we need to be very cognizant of, if I'm going to choose someone outside of the industry, that the learning curve is going to be longer, and I'm going to have to be more patient with that person because it's just going to take time. And so whereas someone coming from the industry, I could say, you know what, we could ramp them up in a year from now. I expect them to be killing and crushing their quotas. Whereas someone else, I might have to really alter their quotas and be patient with how they progress and grow.
Patience, that is the key. Because when I go in and I'm working with organizations, I always say, they say, so Wesleyne, what do you think about this person or that person? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you to fire anybody, but I'm going to say it's going to take this long to get this person up to speed and this long to get that person up to speed. Do you have the bandwidth and the patience to know that this person you hired who doesn't have the skill set, and a lot of times for me, it's like they have no sales experience and no technical experience. I'm like, come on, guys. They need one or the other. Can they have some sales experience or some technical experience? If you hire somebody who just seems good, that doesn't really work. And it's patience. So you were a salesperson and then you transitioned into sales leadership. So tell us about how that transition was for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly natural step. I had started to have some success in West Michigan and growing that territory. And then we had a sales manager in Florida that was retiring. And so we were looking for a replacement, and I was approached to say, would you have interest in uprooting your family, moving down to Florida, and running this division for us? And so I saw it as a great opportunity to get experience in sales management, where I hadn't had a ton of that before. And I think my wife is, great that she's always willing to go take an adventure and move somewhere that we didn't really know anyone. And so we went down to Florida, and I managed a team down there for 3 years. And that was a great experience overall. I've moved a handful of times in my life, and not one of them have I ever regretted. I think anyone who has a chance to move somewhere, especially away from like their hometown, even if it's for 2 or 3 years, I would seize that opportunity because you just get so much from it, seeing a different perspective, a different place, something that you're kind of out of your comfort zone in.
So, as a brand new sales manager that took over an existing team, what were some of the challenges, some of the things that you experienced?
I mean, I think with sales management, at least in my experience, like it all comes down to people. And so I had to assess the people we had. Obviously, there was going to be a different dynamic. I was thrust into a hard situation where I was a very young individual in a sales leadership role down there, where I had one of the salespersons working for me was in their lower 60s. So there's naturally going to be some tension with, I've been doing this, since you were in diapers, and who do you think you are, kind of a thing. So that was for sure tough, and a lot of great learning experiences. And while we were down there, we acquired a company, so we brought on some new team members that we had to integrate into the company, but also the team. We had to assess those, and then a handful of them did not end up working out, and then we did some hiring, so we brought in some new people. So I have a great firsthand experience of going out to the field and finding a salesperson that did not have any technical background, and hiring them because of the potential I saw and working through what was, especially in the beginning, a very painful process. But it ended up being a success story, and so now they're still in the field, in the market, and they're doing a great job. But yeah, I dabbled in a lot of different issues while at my time in Florida.
So within 3 years, you had a established sales team with a lot of, and I think in this time that we're in, there are a lot of salespeople they've never wanted to go into management. They're very comfortable being in sales because, I think we know that the dirty little secret becoming a sales manager, when you first start, you actually make a little bit less money than you did as a salesperson, right? And so a lot of salespeople know that. And so they're getting up there in age, right? So they're in their 50s and 60s. And then, you have this new, tenacious, excited person coming in like, I'm managing you now. Not only did you have that, but then you had to rebuild the team. You had to have some attrition, let some people go. But it sounds like in 3 years after you did that, your next step was where?
So my next step, we decided that we actually wanted to divest of our Florida division, and so we sold it off. And so I went down there, managed a team, we acquired a company, and then we sold it off. And then I moved up to the Chicagoland area where our headquarters is out of. And so I came up here, and I actually took, if you look at maybe a company hierarchy, I took a step down where I did not come into sales management. I came back into a sales role, moving up into Chicagoland. And I did that for about a year, and then we had created a new role called a channel sales manager that I interviewed and accepted that role, and really worked at looking at different kind of partnerships that we could make with other companies, different forms of how to get our product out into the space. And I did that for a while before becoming vice president of sales, which is a title that I also technically retain today.
So tell me, how did you accept that I have to take a step back in order to take a step forward? Going from managing a sales team, being kind of autonomous, to going back into the individual contributor role.
Yeah, I think that's a really hard thing to do for anyone. It's going the opposite direction of where you're trying to go. And I'm a person that has always had pretty clear ambitions, and taking a step away from that ultimate goal or where I'm trying to go is hard to deal with. And so I tried to look at the big picture and what my ultimate goals were, and basically convince myself that taking a step to the side or back does not change where I'm going. It's just altering the path of how I'm going to get there. And so if it takes a little longer, that's okay. If I have to do a little jog in the road I'm fine with that. But it wasn't going to change, my ultimate goal and where I was trying to reach.
And, I think that probably somewhere in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I'm going to headquarters. So maybe there'll be more visibility. Maybe there'll be more opportunities for me, right? And I think that a lot of times, especially in sales, for those people who want to get into leadership and want to get into management, it's hard for them to take a step back, right? It's because it's like, I've been managing people, now I have to be managed. I've been doing pipeline reviews, now I have somebody who's going to be reviewing my pipeline. And so really, I would say just having your ego in check to understand that, hey, it's okay. I'm doing this because there's future growth. And it seems like after a year, you were in the right place. You became the channel sales manager, and then you were able to move into this VP of sales role. So today, as you say, you're the VP of sales as well as the president of the company. So how are you able to balance those two things?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's weeks that I think that probably 80% of my time is spent doing, sales manager, VP of sales type work, and 20% CEO stuff. And some weeks it's, flip flop. So understanding it's not going to be perfect, and we're intentionally running a little lean right now, so I'm okay with it. We know that eventually we'll hire, a sales manager replacement to fill that seat, but for the time being, especially in the climate that we're in with what's going on, we're okay that, I'm wearing a couple of different hats. Some of the jobs that I'm doing, I think, pair well together. Still doing some higher level selling with customers, which I would, and will be doing as a CEO even when we have a sales manager. Still trying to interact with our sales teams as much as I can, and kind of charting the course for where we're trying to go. So I think they pair well together, but I know it's not a long-term solution that we're going to try to stay in.
So once a salesperson, always a salesperson. If you're really truly a salesperson, it's hard to let that go. So you saying that you'll be involved in some higher level deals, it's because you want to, not because you have to.
That's so true. And I went out with one of our salespeople 2 weeks ago, and we did some cold calling. And I hadn't cold called in a while. And we did about a day and a half of it, and we walked and door knocked on 30 different places, and I had so much fun, and we had a lot of success, like a much higher rate than I ever got, I think, on my own. So I don't know, it might have been just like that day and the sun was shining that people wanted to talk to us. But I came back up to the corporate office, and my brother-in-law, who's the COO, was like, "Man, you seem lively today." And he's like, "Is your bucket full right now?" I'm like, "It is kind of full. Like, I just had a blast cold calling." So yeah, there is something just inside a salesperson that kind of gets them going when they do certain activities.
And that, inherent need that you have, or that desire, I'm imagining that's what makes you really good and effective as a VP of sales. Because one thing that, a lot of salespeople say or think is, if you haven't walked a day in my shoes, then you really can't give me advice. But you're like, I just spent a half day cold calling. So if I can do that, you can do that, right? So it's much easier for you to say that. So a lot of times when you're in companies of your size, there's a battle between the CEO and the VP of sales in terms of what the CEO wants and what the VP of sales wants, right? So since you're operating in both of those modes, I'm curious as to, when you have those battles of, this is good for the sales organization, but maybe it's not good for the company, or vice versa. How do you get through those internal battles?
Yeah, I think it's actually, to me, it's easy because I'm having the conversation with myself. So a lot of the battles that we might see as a sales leader, VP of sales, saying, I need more salespeople. I need to stick them here and here because we need to have these growth targets. And then the VP going, well, we got budgets and we can't do everything. And so I'm aware of both sides of those coins. And so at some level, and it's not me alone, we have a great leadership team that we work with, but at some level, we're making that decision together and saying, all right, is it worth the risk to go maybe outside the budget to stick someone here with the expectation that sales are going to do X? And so it is a very fluid process that we're kind of, toiling through what's in the best interest of the company, but also in hitting sales targets. So I'm fairly pragmatic about it. Like, I'm not interested in hitting sales targets for the fun of hitting sales targets. If we're going to hit sales targets, I want them to affect the bottom line and actually progress some of the company goals too.
So you don't have that VP of sales hat that says we'll win by any means necessary, because the CEO hat says we still got to make money.
Exactly. Yes, I'm very aware of the bottom line of it all, and I guess that probably helps too in some capacity with the team. So our sales team probably knows more about what's going on with the company than, say, a lot of sales teams that just have a top line quota. So our team has they have a top line quota, they know where we're going for, but they also understand some of the cogs that are involved and some of the overhead that we have, and that, what fun is it to, do $20 more million worth of sales if we're going to make the same profit? Like, we all feel good, but we actually were very inefficient in what we were doing.
Yes, I always say that, as a middle management sales manager, even as a salesperson, when you think about discounting, you always think about top down. How much can I discount? What can I discount? And as a good sales leader, you think about bottom up. What's my margin? Yeah. What's the lowest margin that I can sell from, right? And so again, since you have that view, you're able to tell the team that. So instead of that top down view, they're looking at bottom up, right? So they think about things in terms of that bottom up, and it helps them be better salespeople because they understand, hey, no, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, I need to walk away from this deal. Or maybe I shouldn't do this now because it doesn't make sense for the company.
Yep. And our team is getting better at that every single day. But it's a learning process, right? We're all kind of figuring it out as we go.
Awesome. So you kind of mentioned a success story in there a little bit. But as you look back at your career as a sales manager or VP of sales, who's a person, a team, a situation that you're really proud of today?
Yeah, if I look back over the career, I would probably echo the one that I started on, which was down in Florida. And that was such a hard time. We hired this individual, and they were struggling in the beginning. And I had a sales manager at the time who was a former VP of sales for our company. And I was going to him saying, like, what do I do here? Like, the person's just not getting the job. I don't know what to do. It's early on, but I'm nervous. And he was very quick to be like, cut him. You're done. Like, let him go. And I was like, and I just couldn't. I'm like, this is our fault. Like, if we hired him, and we should have done a better job on the front end, knowing what we were getting, and to take this individual from the job that they were doing, bring him in house, and just say, oh, you're not really what I'm looking for. Like, I couldn't handle that. And so I went against what our VP of sales said I should do. And I said, I'm not going to cut him. Like, this is on me just as much as it is on him. And so I just worked more with him and had more patience. Like I said, we divested of that area, but the company we sold to, he still works for to this day. And he's doing great. And he's progressed along, and he's a key member of their team now. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that I stuck with him and, didn't give up.
That's powerful. I love that story because so many times that's the answer, right? Just cut them. And I often ask sales managers, sales leaders, when they have that low performing person, I ask them to be introspective, and I say, have you given that person the best of you? Have you invested? Have you coached them to the best of your ability? And most times they say no. And so I'm like, it's on you, it's not on them, right? And I think you realize that. You said, it's on me, it's not on him. Let me invest more, and your investment paid off dividends.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Andy, I've enjoyed our time together. If somebody wants to reach out to you or get in contact with you, what is the one best way?
One best way is probably LinkedIn. Obviously, they can search me at Andy Reimink, and they'll find me and send a message. I'm pretty accessible, so they could also just Google search HOH Water Technology and call our office and say, I want to talk to Andy, and you'll get through at some point in time. I'm pretty accessible, but LinkedIn is a very easy way.
Awesome. LinkedIn. And I'm just going to give people another little tip there. Hey, all you cold callers out there, sometimes you don't think that you can access a decision maker, but have you ever thought about just Googling them, picking up the phone and asking to be patched through? tenacity. Like you said, at some point they'll get patched through. Tenacity.
There you go. There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Make sure you check out Andy on LinkedIn.